Jai Gurudev, Stefano.
Jai Gurudev, Swami Revati.
Nice to have you on the podcast.
It's nice to be here. It's my honor, my pleasure.
So this is an idea that came up, sort of the two of us. I was looking for, let's say, people who I know already in my sort of closer circle who have rich life experiences and a lot of interesting topics that we could touch here that we haven't already. And then, of course, your name obviously came up.
Popped out.
So for those of you who don't know, Stefano he was a dentist. And this is second dentist already on the channel.
Yeah.
But now has transitioned primarily. You're a photographer, you're an author, obviously a devotee of Guruji, documentarist, YouTuber, a lot of things you're doing.
Yeah. TV host.
TV host, wow. And I think it lends super well to the topic that we want to sort of explore today. But before I jump into that, tell me a little bit about like how you met Guruji, just very briefly, so that we understand your spiritual background. Let's put it like this.
So my spiritual background is basically zero. I mean, I grew up in a family that has a tendency towards spirituality, especially from my mother's side and brother's side. And I was always surrounded by sort of, let's call it new age environments or interest in spirituality, but they never touched me.
Mm-hmm.
I was just a witness of that without any involvement. And as you mentioned, I used to be a dentist, graduated, and I've been a surgeon for kind of 9 years. I was practicing. I was about to open my own practice, and I had like the sort of perfect regular life that you can imagine, like this in the TV commercial about like cookies, no? Where you have the family, and he's a dentist, has a good girlfriend, and all this stuff. And I was traveling. I was talented in photography. I used to be a musician, all this stuff. So I was kind of, let's say, the cool guy among my friends. He does a lot of things and so on. No reason to change that. Absolutely no reason to change that.
Makes sense.
Until, I'm not going into details, it's a crazy story. But anyway, I've been invited to a darshan of Guruji in my hometown, in Torino, in Italy, northwest Italy. And at first I didn't have any reason to go, but then eventually all my plans got cancelled by unbelievable events. And okay, my evening is free, let me go there. And then I met him. Then after I met him, I can, like a sort of apocalypse happened in my external life. So everything that I built until that moment like collapsed. And I found myself kind of like, wow, there is nothing left. Like all my job, my personal life and so on, it was completely messed up. And meanwhile, what was my passion, what the things I was doing with love, with photography, making some videos on YouTube just for friends, to show your experiences around the world. Well, it started to be much more successful, little bit. And at some point, I found myself with the decision like, okay, maybe I should decide, or I rebuild again what collapsed, or I try to build something new. And in that process, of course, I was looking at a lot of video of Guruji, like Insights from the Master, that playlist on YouTube channel. Yeah. And then eventually I went to a second darshan with Guruji in Switzerland, like 2 hours drive from my home. And that's basically the moment where Guruji was able to let me understand that everything that was happening was no surprise for him at all. And that it made me like sort of guess that there was a bigger plan behind it. And that moment I decided to trust him. And of course, it developed among the next few months. And I became a devotee the next year. Actually, Guruji made me a devotee, but that's another story. And that's how I met him. I was completely not interested at all in spirituality, but then I saw in his message, in his personal example, and the sangha around him, like you and all the Swamis, all the brahmacharis, and the other devotees, that there was a place where I could at least learn a lot,
right?
At least find some very nice guidance for my life outside. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what happened, because I still now I've been a devotee since 7 years now. It was 2016, so it makes 7 now. Okay, 7 years, and I still keep having an outside regular life. Meanwhile, all this small seed of photography and video making became my full-time job. I decided to quit dentistry, which of course in Italy was a shock. Like it made the title of the newspapers, Italian dentist from Torino leave his job to travel the world. All these dramatic stories. And with my YouTube channel, with social media, which was an amazing tool back then, and still nowadays, of course, basically became popular in Italy. I can call myself one of the top 3 at least, or 5 travel blogger in Italy. I have a YouTube channel which is highly followed, Instagram page and photography, and basically, so my job is based on that nowadays. And still, of course, it doesn't go in conflict with my spiritual life, which actually is the best support I can have on what it from outside look a completely, let's say, materially oriented life, because you look like the famous guy, the popular guy, the one that people stop you on the street to have selfies with you and all this stuff. But then on the base of that, that's of course the Guruji is always there in my spiritual life, my daily sadhana, daily life as a devotee. And so that's how I met Guruji somehow. And then what happened after I met Guruji, because one important thing to highlight in that story is that meeting Guruji was the key, the definitive key to make that shift in my life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually, before I unpack this sort of the result of that now, 7 years later, this fame that you're talking about, one of the things that you said that I think is really difficult for people but important is this transition from a job that is good on paper to maybe doing more the things that you love to do.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy jump. It's not an easy shift for people to do. I think a lot of people have struggled with that
That's
in every
very interesting topic.
level of life. And so how was that initial transition for you? Like not only for you, but for the people around you, the sort of opinions that you start to hear. And was there anything like that, like negative?
Yeah,
I guess so. That's why I'm curious to hear.
Not easy.
How was it?
Easy to guess. I mean, so not only I was a dentist, but inside the small world of dentistry, I was kind of appreciated. Like I was considered a nice one from my colleagues. So that kind of guy that never should leave. I graduated with good marks and so on and whatever. But the point is that, as you said, is one thing is a job which is good on paper, and it was good. First of all, it's not that I was doing it by hating it. I was enjoying doing it, but I was giving like, let's say, 65% of myself. And it's interesting how life gave me an experience about that. And the experience was like this: I was about to open my dental practice with a colleague of mine, which was, let's say, on the opposite spectrum. Like he was loving dentistry like crazy. I mean, he finishes 12 hours shift, then it comes back home and he studies dental literature and he studies cases and he calls a specialist and he tries to find a master, like a mentor to make his skill better. It's completely like single pointed on dentistry. It was so much. While in my case, it was absolutely not like this. I was doing my stuff. I was doing it honestly, but anytime I had some little moment, even between one patient and the other, I was post-processing my pictures or thinking about editing some videos or thinking about where should we go to have a trip next time and which kind of story I can tell. That was what was coming from inside, But of course, as you can easily imagine, how can you make a job out of that?
Difficult.
It's difficult, and actually from many people it's impossible. Like, especially this friend of mine, we'd had some conversation and he said, just remember that you will never pay your bills with the likes on Facebook, no? Which is true. And
I've heard this same, but not with likes. I said, what people always tell me, love won't pay the bills. Your monk dedicated to all this devotion is not going to pay the bills.
Which is true. There is a point in that, but those perspectives miss the whole point. Is that you don't do it for the like itself. No, you do it for something else. At the moment, it was not clear even to me. That's the first difficult issue, because as Guruji says many times, we don't know ourselves. And this is true on the highest spiritual reality. Like you don't know the soul, but it's also true on the most basic level. Like you don't even know what you love. You don't even know what you should dedicate yourself to, because we are so much covered with so many layers of education, society, and so on, that basically we are trained to conform ourselves to society. And the moment you get a job like that, you're a dentist, you studied for that, your family spend money for that. Like, oh, well, no way. It's no way you're going to leave it. No?
Yeah.
So, of course, I got first of all, some opposition from outside, like, come on, man, you're crazy. What are you doing? You're never going to have money about that, and blah, blah, blah. And there was also a more interesting nuance in that, which was leveraging on the emotional side. Like, okay, if you start traveling the world, because it was my big dream, to make a living out of traveling, okay? If you're going to do that, you will never going to find a woman that will ever love you. No, you're always going to be alone for that. Huh? And that was hitting on me a little bit until some point, until I get to that extreme point where I could not, let's say, I could not avoid looking what was so important to me. And I was, okay, if I have to be alone the rest of my life, fine. If that's the price I have to pay, I'll pay it. Because if I don't do it, I'm going to be sick. That was my inner intuition. If I don't follow that intuition that I have to do this in my life, I'm going to be sick. Like, I'm going to physically have some illness. And then my life is going to be completely devastated from physical point of view. That was my inner intuition. But of course, this is not enough to convince society or to convince parents. Of course, I have to confront my parents with that decision. And I have to say, like, Guruji was like the main lighthouse in this storm, because Guruji was always very vertical on that. Like, first of all, the first time I told him, like, maybe maybe I don't know, maybe I don't have to be a dentist. And he was like he shouted into an exultation, like if you scored the goal for the World Cup in the 90th minute, no? It was so shouting, like, yes, do it. Like, it was like this. He was my biggest supporter.
That's amazing.
And even, let's say, of course, quote unquote, not knowing anything about me. So from the outside perspective, of course. And also, once we had another conversation, because it took some time, to make this transition. Once we had a conversation, and he said, like, so you have to do what you love. And I answered him, like, yes, but it's not only about what I love, meaning love don't pay the bills.
Yeah.
And Guruji didn't accept this answer. No, it's not true. It's only about what you love. And what else is about? And it took some years for me to understand that answer, which eventually it turned out to be completely true. Because once I made a deep reflection on that topic, and actually this is one of the main topics I've been interviewed about, because people look from outside, they look at this transition as something monumental, like you live the certain for the uncertain, you live the prestige, social prestige,
comfort zones,
comfort zone. Okay, so the point is that, okay, guys, what I always say, answering in this topic, you don't have to focus on what you get from what you do. You have to focus on what you give. That's the main lesson I've learned. Being a dentist, I was getting a lot, but what I was giving something that many others could give. I had some talents in photography and video making and so on, and what I was giving in that topic was unique. Actually, only I could give that specific perspective, nuance, or whatever. And therefore, I convinced myself, okay, this is my call. And even if I was happy to be a dentist, I was doing it honestly, with dedication, with I can say service to my patient, not even never watching money or this stuff, like always fully dedicated to my patient. But still, I was giving 70% of myself.
Yeah.
On that other field, I was giving 100%. And that 100%, this gap is only filled by love. The moment you understand that what you're doing in life, first of all, doesn't have any meaning in itself and for yourself, it has the meaning for others. Life has to be shifted on a service perspective. And that's actually the very mood I made this transition. Because, okay, I was not sure if I was able to make it. I was not sure what would come, if I would able to sustain myself, even just to pay my bills, to pay my food or whatever. No?
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't want to rely on parents, and because it was pride principle,
Sure.
let's say. And it has to be right. You have to be grounded in that point. And so at that point, basically, I just decided, I just realized, okay, I have to do it because I have to bring value to others. Whatever I do has to be for others. Every single thing I do in my life has to be an act of service somehow to my community, which was growing little by little. So now it's 200,000, but back then it was 2,000. You cannot make a job out of 2,000 follower Facebook page. Okay, absolutely not. And that was the main mentality, and Guruji helped a lot in that mentality. And once I was explaining this mentality also to my parents, and they slowly started to accept it, and at least giving me the trust to try, which was the biggest gift I got from them, because I was not opposed by them. Of course, they were worried, and they were not hiding that, but they say like, hey, we trust you, do your best. And
Nice.
of course, in the outside world, like in the family and in the friends, colleagues, there was a two-ways reaction. One's where you're completely crazy, what are you doing? And the other guys, which basically were sharing a sort of space in that situation, that inner space, like they felt called to someone else, but they didn't have the courage to.
So they live through you almost. It's like, go ahead for us. Like,
go us, be our human shield,
Yeah.
and so we see how it goes.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So it's like, you're amazing, you're gonna be great, and so on. But of course, I was not believing them, because yes, you say like this because I'm the one putting the skin on that. So,
Yeah.
and there is also one very, very interesting nuances that is it's important for me to highlight, is that many people say when you are facing this kind of transition in life, many people say, okay, don't worry, if it doesn't go well, it's easy. You just come back. Anyway, you're a dentist. Anyway, you are graduated.
You have a backup plan.
You have a backup plan. Come on. You can try a couple years. If it doesn't work out, what to do? You just come back. It doesn't work like that. Once you take this inner decision, when you decided to follow this, we can call it a spiritual voice, because it's something that doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the heart. It really, and I have many inner experience in these years where, whenever I was dedicating myself to that, and whenever was something opposing to my dedication to that, I had the feeling like there was something on my back pushing me with a strength that I cannot hold. Like even bringing out some quote unquote violence from myself, like to go for that no matter what. And the moment you decided to not to oppose that stream, but to go with that stream, with that flow, then you don't go back. Try to imagine you swim against the stream for all your lifetime, and at some point, okay, let me go with the flow, with the stream. You don't start.
Yeah, you don't turn around again.
You don't turn around.
For sure. You know, I think hearing you, it reminded me, some time back, I spoke at a conference. It was the International Congress of Happiness.
Yeah.
And I went there and I gave a talk, and I was touching upon this point because I looked at the audience and I saw the people. They were not necessarily spiritual or religious. I mean, they had some inclinations towards that. But one thing I saw was how much the people were creating this perfect vision of what happiness should be and what a happy life is and what a good life is. And it was very much on paper. It was very much, like the traditional construct of life. And the issue is that it was so clear to me that they were falling short of that all the time. They were never reaching that perfect vision that they're creating for themselves. And then every speaker was getting up on stage and portraying like, this is how you're going to get to your perfect life. This is how you're going to get to your perfect life. And everybody in the audience was looking at them almost in this feeling of like, I wish it was that simple. I wish I could be like you. I'm going to convince myself that it's possible. But you could see underneath there that there was something missing, that the people were feeling like, it's like that perfect life on social media that you see, and you think, I would like it, but you're not going to get exactly that, because life isn't so simple, right? And so I explained, I got up, it was my turn to speak, and I said, be careful with one thing, because one thing that I had when I was a kid, I wanted to be famous. People used to say, oh, what do you want to be when you go older? Famous. Doesn't matter what. That's it.
Yes.
As an actor, football player, whatever, just famous.
What's important to be famous.
Yeah. And maybe it was because of my environment. I grew up split between Brazil and Portugal, but I had this feeling of like, I need to be famous. And I had a friend, I remember I had a conversation with that friend when we were very young. And I said to him, what do you want to do? And he's like, I want to be famous too. And I said, why? And he was like, because then people will respect me. And at the time, it was very debatable now.
Because
but
actually, you're going to be highly unrespected.
I can 100% agree from my position looking now. But at that time, I was like, oh, interesting answer. And I remember reflecting on that conversation so many years after, like repeatedly thinking about that conversation. And I thought to myself, what was that guy going to be willing to do to get the respect of other people?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know in my life what I've had to do to get respect from other people. And a lot of the times it's been self-sacrifice. I've had to put aside what I feel is right and what I think is my true nature. I've had to hide it, pretend, do all sorts of things just to get someone else's respect. And so I said to the crowd, I said, look, on your road to being the best version of yourself, doing the things you love, becoming whatever you think you should become, be very careful, because you may please someone else,
mm-hmm.
but you're 1 or 2 hours a day with that person. But you're 24 hours a day with your own mind. And you know when you're being a fraud. You know when you're lying to yourself. You know when you are denying your truth. And you're talking about this intuition that you were going to be physically sick if you didn't do something like that. I feel there's a version of that inside everybody. When you know you're doing something that isn't really who you are and who you know you should be, it might even be pleasing everybody else, family, friends, colleagues, the world at large. They might look at you and say, amazing, congrats. But if your inner compass doesn't say congrats, like, yes, this is right, you're going to suffer way more than you're going to feel happy.
Much more.
You know, you can get 1 million likes, but you're going to go to bed thinking, I'm a fraud. I'm not living my true self, my true authentic
And this actually, I can give an active testimony, because being into the so-called influencer world nowadays, I've been partnering with some other so-called influencers for projects or whatever, and I get to confront myself, with some other colleagues, let's call it, with very popular lads, even much more than myself.
Yeah.
And they are slaves. They are slaves of their own personage, their own
the image they created,
the content, the numbers, the algorithms on. They are so unhappy. I was sitting in table eating with my, let's call them colleagues, the influencers on Instagram.
Yeah.
And they were constantly, no. Now the algorithm is pushing the video, so we have to stop doing pictures. And I was like, okay, good. At some point, it was interesting because of you have to have a grounded way of doing things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they were missing the whole point.
Yeah.
Once, one of the most famous episodes I always tell is like one of these influencers told me, like, oh, wow, so you wrote a book? Which strategy do you have? It's a sort of personal branding. Is which kind of what he said? So personal branding. Which kind of strategy is that? And I just answered, no, I wrote a book because I have something to tell.
It's quite simple.
I mean, what about okay, if it sells 1 billion copies, wow, I'm happy, but I didn't do it with that purpose. I did anyway. And also on the topic you brought, there is a very interesting experience that I had on myself, that we also in the spiritual world, we always listen, applied to saints' life, applied to the highest goals of devotion. Guruji says millions of times, like, how much are you ready to sacrifice for God, for the spiritual purposes of your life?
Yeah.
Okay, and that draws the line between the major saints of Hindu history, Christian history, and whatever, and just regular people that go to church on Sunday. No, if you take this principle to the pursuit of happiness in life, it's the same thing. The moment you feel that that there is something that is going to make you happy at all, you know that is okay. This is my call. I'm happy because I love cooking and I want to open a cooking business and so on. But I'm an employee in the insurance company, and this gives me comfort zone. Okay, so how much are you ready to sacrifice for that? How much do you believe in that? How much are you ready to put all yourself and ready to pay any price you have to pay for that? If you take the life history of all the most important athletes, I can say businessmen,
Whoever's successful,
artists,
whatever field.
and I mean not only the prominent people like famous people, but also you take the personal example of anything that can call himself genuinely happy, even an old man sitting in the courtyard just playing with his grandchildren. Okay, you will always find that at some point in life they've been tested for that. They've been put in front of a situation that, okay, you have an easy way out, like red pill, blue pill, no? Matrix stuff. Okay, so easy way out. You do whatever you've been used to do. Gonna be a smooth life. Take your salary, have your family, stable relationship, whatever. But then you're gonna die inside, and you will pay the price for that much later.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Rajasic happiness and the Sattvic happiness in the Gita, no? Like it's
nectar at first, poison at the end.
Nectar first and poison at the end, with poison first and nectar at the end. So it's exactly the same thing. That's why I got excited with the message of the Gita and of the teaching of Guruji, because it's so concrete.
It's real. It's real.
So I can touch firsthand. And the point is that I found myself like exactly in that situation. I'm not going into details because it's be long, but basically I found myself exactly in front of the choice. You have to choose, or you choose the things you love and so on, or you choose that. And I remember in that moment, I was not even blinking in my eye. It was like, there's no way I'm going to go for what I love, no matter the price I have to pay, no matter. And that's the root where everything was built. And everything is that bring happiness in life is built in any single possible variation you can have. You can talk about traveling and photography and video making for myself. For somebody else can be completely different. But the principle is that at some point you have to be fully committed to what you truly believe you are destined to do, let's say.
There was something you said that I think is unmissable. People have to understand this. You talked about bringing value and service with whatever you do. Because I think sometimes people, and this is a problem I've identified with life coaches and a lot of things that are going on in the world nowadays, people who try to fix their life and improve their life, it becomes very desire-driven. It's like you fulfill your desires, make yourself happy at all costs. And somebody can misunderstand what you were just saying now, this point of like sacrifice whatever to satisfy that inner feeling or whatever. I don't think we have to make a bridge here, let's put it like this, to God and to spirituality and to Bhakti, because I think it's an important point, and a lot of the people who will listen to this will have that question. What's the balance between satisfying myself and then building my relationship with God and becoming a little bit more selfless? Because some people think, okay, but as a dentist, I was offering a service, and even if it doesn't make me happy, selflessly, I have to forget about myself and just serve. And I think there's a mistake in that. And I think the mistake is this. There's a story of Pundalik. So Pundalik is one of the great saints that eventually led to the emergence of the deity of Vittala and the entire tradition that follows on from that. Story for another time. But Pundalik was self-serving, and he essentially became selfless. And his selflessness was about serving his parents. But what is key in that is that serving his parents made him happy. And it built up so much love inside of him that love attracted God into the equation, even though he was not aiming for God. And so my point there is that God is attracted by genuine love.
That's the point, yes.
And if you're there in that as a dentist saying, yeah, but I'm serving people, but you're not genuinely doing it out of the deepest love you have, or it doesn't manifest the deepest love, even though it's service and therefore has value, it doesn't attract the highest good, the highest reality into your life. When you can direct that same principle of service, but almost motivated or fed by genuine love, genuine happiness to be serving, to be bringing that specific value. When you marry those two things, the love, the happiness that is produced from that, the happiness from serving someone else by doing something that you love to do, brings God into your life. And the way Guruji comes into your life, into my life, into so many other lives, and the saints that we talked about, it's the thing I most wish for other people. So we can sit here and say, oh, follow your passion projects.
No, that's I will not agree with passion.
You see, and this is the thing. It's no, it's find the service you can bring to the world
Mm-hmm.
that at the same time is the most coherent with your heart and mind and values. That inner coherence will manifest something so powerful from inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
God will come running for you. He'll come running into your life.
You know, this is a topic I've been talking endless time about, and it triggers, like, I was able to put it down into a slogan, basically, no? Because it's, you said, follow your passion. That's what the word tells you.
Yeah.
And actually, that's how the word interprets what happened to me, for example. Like, oh my God, Stefano, you see, he followed his passion. And every time I was like, what the hell are you saying? I didn't follow my passion. Because if it was only about my passion, I would be as frustrated as before by now.
Yeah.
Passion is just another synonymous of desire. Okay? Once you like something, you have passion for it, you enjoy doing, okay, the moment it becomes your daily job and you have to do it no matter what, 24/7, especially if it's an artistic job, but basically doesn't have any separation between job and regular life.
Yeah.
I don't take any vacation, for example. Okay, then you're gonna start hating it. The moment you have to do it because it's your job, your passion becomes your worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I always say, don't look for your passion, look for your mission. This is what you have to look for. And how?
It's Dharma, yeah.
Obvious question. Then how can I understand what is my mission? And so the passion is something that you do, longing for people saying to you, good, you're good, compliment, recognition, like self-satisfaction.
Yeah.
Mission is something you do, looking for people to say thank you. Okay, don't look for people that praise you, but don't look for the things that make people praise you, but look for the things that make people be grateful for what you have done. Because if people have that feeling for what you're doing, then it means that you're giving something to them.
It's an interesting distinction, yeah.
Okay, so of course this is a very basic, put into a slogan, as I said, but the point is that you, when sometimes even students or people, younger people, they ask me like, how can I find my path in life and so on? Like, listen, you have some talents. You have something you're good at and you don't even know why.
Mm-hmm.
You've been born with that. No? I don't know, maybe you're whatever. You can even being happy with the most simple 9-to-5 job, it's a talent in some way. Okay?
Yep.
If it's that what brings you the most genuine expression of yourself. So it doesn't have something fancy. Not everybody has to be an artist or whatever. You just have to be genuinely, fully happy with what we're doing. And the way you can find that is that the moment you're expressing that specific aspect of yourself, the world is going to respond. And it's going to respond with gratitude. I always make this example. Now, try to imagine you're going to buy the bread. You're going to buy the bread and you find the grumpy bread shopper. How do you call it? The bread shopper. The baker.
Baker.
The baker, okay. So,
yeah.
So bread shopper is nice. Okay. So you find the grumpy baker. Okay, so this is one. This okay. So it's €2. Okay, buy. And then you go to another baker and say, okay, listen, the last time you took this one, but can I please suggest you, I just to make some different combination of flour in this one, and I made this experiment because I think it's better digestible, and I don't know, but you should try it, this one. Okay, you're still taking some piece of flour and water. That's what bread is, okay? But you're taking much more in that experience. And the experience, and what you're buying with that stuff is the passion, the love, the dedication, the service attitude that this baker is putting into his bread. Okay? And he's just a baker. It's not like Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
The same happens with creative jobs. I had this very experience because, as I mentioned before, I used to be a musician before. And I wanted to be a rock star, of course, with my band. We were good, actually. We were doing some pretty nice stuff. And everybody around was, hey, you're going to be famous, and wow, blah, blah, blah. But what was my attitude to that? My attitude was, I want to become famous. I want to become, a famous and recognized artist and play in the stadiums all around the world and whatever. But then what? I was doing only for myself. And it didn't work out, thank God. The moment I started to do this other kind of artist job, which is photography and so on, the very purpose at the very beginning, the very, let's say, awareness in the very beginning, it was not like, okay, I don't care how many followers I have, how much money I will make out of that. The point is that people is answering to what I'm doing with such an enthusiasm, with such a gratitude, that it's clear that it's not only me doing something.
Yeah.
It's clear that there is some invisible force behind me which is driving that things to happen, because it's completely unreasonable. Let me make you one of the brightest example I had. I published one of my first documentary on YouTube. Now it's kind of a milestone in my personal history, but back then it was just a video of my vacation. Okay, 1,000 people is gonna see it, and who cares? Actually, it was much more. But one of those, never met him until nowadays. He just texted me an email like, "Hey Stefano, we don't know each other, but I just happened to randomly see your video, and just I want to say that it has such a beautiful effect on me and my wife, because, well, we had such a horrible experience. We lost a child. No, we had our child died, and it destroyed our family relationship, our family life, and blah blah blah. We were so depressed with no purpose in life, and by chance we saw your video, and all of a sudden we found the joy to live again, to travel, and so on. And you know what? 1 year later, we had another child. Okay, so once I read that stuff, first of all, I cried. No, but then it was piling up on some similar testimony. I was, okay, come on, man, it's a video about vacation, and it's not even that well shot because I was a beginner at the time. It was not so nicely framed and so on.
Right.
They must have seen something else that I was not seeing in the first place. That's the point. That what you said, God is attracted by genuine love.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned before, we don't know ourselves. We don't know what we love. But God knows what you love. And the moment you express it, He's gonna exalt, as Guruji exalted in the moment I told him I want to do this in life. And this, of course, unpacks the whole concept of Dharma. What is Dharma? No? Because you mentioned, well, anyway, you could serve the community with being a dentist and so on. Many people told me the same exact words. No? How do you understand that you have to be a dentist and not a photographer, or opposite? And the point is that you have to look at the signs.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at the fruits, what comes out. You have to see where your ego is raised and where your ego is actually humbled. Because if you are honest, if you receive that email, only a stupid can claim, hey, you see, those guys, they saw my video, and he made a miracle. Like, they can.
I'm amazing.
I'm amazing. Can you imagine? No, if you have a little bit of brain, you will understand that, like, shit, it's something big happening here. And I don't know where it comes from.
Yeah.
And you have to investigate it. And that's where the spiritual path comes in. Because it gives you understanding of that. One of the most beautiful gifts I got in the spiritual path is that by learning, by practicing, by being in the companies of devotees, Swamis, and so on, now I'm also becoming a knowledge teacher, because you're my teacher, I'm your student. That's one other thing I have. Then you have very, very, very precise and detailed explanation of all the process I went through, the bad ones and the good ones.
Talking about Dharma, it's funny because it brings so many memories inside of me, because it's the most popular question Guruji ever gets. Mm-hmm. Guruji, what is my Dharma? What is my purpose in life? And everybody wants to know, and you were just saying, and you said the perfect thing, look for the signs. Because Dharma is something that evolves throughout your life. You have a Dharma that leads you to another one, that leads you to another one, exactly. That eventually leads you to the one that you're supposed to be doing. And it's funny because when I started my career in Bhakti Marga, in Guruji's mission, I wanted one thing and one thing only, for Guruji to acknowledge me, for him to look at me and say, well done, like a proud father, right? And the problem with that is that he could understand
I think we can all relate to that, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. But it falls a little bit in that first category of the passion versus the mission. Yeah. It's like I wanted the recognition.
That's the point.
And he gave it to me once in a while when I was very young, because I started very young. And I think it was more because he knew that I really needed it. It wasn't something that I was wise enough to know how to navigate. But as I grew older, I didn't lose the habit of wanting that recognition. And I transitioned into more and more responsibilities and more important services in Bhakti Marga, in Guruji's mission. And I didn't lose that bad habit of wanting the recognition. And I remember one time I was sitting with him and I said, Guruji, I just want to make you proud. I just want to make you happy, because he was telling me off for something. And I made that very clear to him. I just want you to let me know that you're happy with what I'm doing, and the rest doesn't matter to me. So I had reduced the want of recognition down to one person, but it was still there. So I didn't care if everybody else recognized me or not, genuinely, but I needed to get it from him. And he told me off. He said, that's a really poor attitude to do your seva with. And if you're going to do it like that, then honestly, I'd rather not receive your service. And I felt so confused, because I was like, well, I'm telling you this out of my dedication and love for you. You're the only one that matters to me, in the sense that your opinion is the one I value, and I would like to know it. And he was sort of trying to tell me something else between the lines, which was like, look, you know that you're doing the thing you're supposed to do. Why do you need me to tell you? Because that experience that you shared, when you're doing the right thing, there's almost like this invisible force behind you that propels the service, takes it to another level, and you feel like you're participating in something almost. It's not like you are creating it. And I've had that experience. I had that experience so many times. I remember when I first stood up in front of a class of students, because Guruji told me to teach, and I taught. I felt like, whoa, what is this? And it wasn't about speaking. It wasn't that the people were clapping. It was nothing like that. It was something just worked with me. Like, I'm here speaking, but I know that I am being pushed forward. My words are being pushed out by something else as well, because I was saying things I hadn't thought. I was saying things that I hadn't prepared, right?
Yeah.
And
same experience I had.
And then you sit there and you go, there's no doubt. There is no doubt this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It feels completely correct inside of me. But because I had this bad habit, I still needed the external recognition. And so he told me off harshly, and it was a strong experience for me, because it was this feeling of, I need you to grow up. I need you to become an adult spiritually. Because materially we all grow up, but we have the little desires we had when we were kids. They don't leave us. They just change, adapt, but they're still there.
Sometimes they come back.
Yeah. You want daddy to tell you, good job. And even the adults want that. And we replace daddy for the likes on Facebook and the crowds and the colleagues and the friends and whoever else. But we want that pat on the head, good job, right? And then he was sort of telling me, get out of that. Stop that. I want you out of that. You're not going to have that mentality anymore, because you know that you need to trust what you feel. And you feel so, I felt so purposeful when I'm doing those things. When it's the things that I know that I'm meant to be doing. Sometimes people ask me, oh, you're a Swami. Maybe you've had some extraordinary spiritual experiences, like inside of yourself. Like, what can you share? And I tell people, I don't see lights and energies and all of these things. It's not my thing. Maybe others do, but I don't. But I can tell you two things. When I'm teaching, when I'm speaking to people, and I know it because Guruji has always told me that that's what I'm supposed to do, and when I'm initiating people as his disciples, those two things I cannot describe to you, like the feeling that I get. Because it's the feeling, imagine God suddenly shows up inside of you and you feel him right there. He's there with you. And it's like he shows up when it's time for me to do my purpose. And then when I'm finished with it, he's like, okay, I'm going to go back to sleep. And so I feel it black and white, the difference. And so what I'm saying is that I would love for people to be able to read the signs, accept what they're doing now as being non-final. Like, don't become dramatic. Don't think that just because right now you're doing something that doesn't fully do those things that we're describing, it can still develop, it can still change, and it can still grow if you're open to it.
Well, there is also, in my own experience, as I told you, it was not an instant transition. It took some time, which means that for 1 year, actually, I was, we say in Italy, you keep the foot in two shoes.
Right.
Like I was half time still being a dentist, like working time to time, and half time traveling and developing that other sphere of my life to a more professional level. Okay. And of course, once you are in that stage, and of course you already are oriented to the next step, you feel a sense of urgency, no? Okay, I want to quit the old and get to the new one. Okay? And I was speaking with Guruji about that. Guruji said, oh, should I do it? And of course, you ask Guruji, should they do it? Hoping that Guruji will tell you, yes, it's time for you to do it. No, all these illusions. And Guruji was like, no, you're not ready yet. I said, and just remember that whatever you're doing in any moment, it's God's will is there with you. Yeah. So there is a purpose. And I was at first frustrated by that, but then, you analyze it in a wider perspective, no? Okay, I have been a dentist for 9 years, and that gave me the tools to develop this stage of my life. And I'm well aware, as you said, that it can easily not be permanent, because eventually, even now we're talking about brightly recognized things from the outside, like fame, popularity, and success, and so on. Those things, then they can fade in one day. Yeah. And I actually had this experience, because once because of strange things happening in the internet connections and so on, I was just kicked out of my YouTube channel.
Oh, wow.
So, and there was no way to get back in. Huh? And I was even locked down in Mauritius. Actually, it was in the hotel, no way even to get out of my room. So, and I was supposed to stay there for a couple months. So I was okay. And I was confronting with the thought, yeah, I'm a famous YouTuber, but my YouTube channel can disappear from one day to another. What if YouTube fails? Google fails tomorrow for some reason? I don't know. It's quite unlikely, but it can happen. What if
they ban you?
What if whatever?
Whatever, yeah.
Whatever. What if you just and it happens actually more often than you can imagine. Even I know. What if all of a sudden I will have some health issue or personal issue in the family. I don't know that prohibits me from traveling.
Yeah.
What can you do? No. So anything at any moment can be removed from you, and you have to be very well aware of that. This is a very grounding principle, and that's what life is all about, no? Is anything you have, from the most beautiful, from the most worst thing, most horrible thing, is not permanent.
No, I agree.
And even now, I'm fully aware that nowadays my dharma, my purpose, is doing what I'm doing. But who knows what's gonna be in the next few hours, in the next few decades, and how long I'm gonna live. I don't know. So this is something you have always to be in mind.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's really that. It's that combination of acceptance, but then reading the signs, knowing how to transition, a little bit of courage you always need to be able to take that step. But I want to talk about maybe the other side of the coin, which is some of the dangers that come with fame.
Oh, a lot.
Because I've experienced them in my own world. You see, I might not be famous, let's say, in the public eye, but I'm relatively famous in the Bhakti Marga eye. Let's put it like this. And I've done... At this point, I've taught thousands of people, and the experience I have is there's that moment when you finish a lecture, for example, where you know people are about to thank you and praise you and clap and all of these things. And you see the reaction inside of you that goes, do I want to stay for that? Do I want that?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big part of you that goes, yep, that's exactly what I want. Now, look at their faces, see what they say, see what the expressions, their claps, etc. Or sometimes the opposite, if they don't like how that also affects you and that entire game. And I really liked what you said earlier about the whole gratitude versus praise situation. Something I also learned. I can 100% back up what you said there. But I was having a conversation with Satyanarayan Das Babaji, Vrindavan, one of Guruji's friends. And I asked him, what do you think is the biggest threat to the spiritual path? And he said pratishtha, and pratishtha means fame, recognition. And it was exactly in that spirit of praise. And I said to him, could you elaborate a little bit why you think that's the biggest threat? And he said, because it's one of the only problems that if you recognize that it's a threat and you run away from it, it chases after you. And I thought,
Interesting.
Because the example was like, you look
It's a
at a
nice
stove,
point,
the
actually.
fire is there, just don't touch the fire. The fire's not going to come after you. You just don't touch it.
No.
But he's like, but fame runs after you even when you run from it.
Yeah.
Because
That's true.
if you run to it, okay, congratulations, you get famous, but you're going to get burned. If you run away from it, then you become famous as the guy who runs away from fame. Fame always runs at you in different ways. Right? And I thought, wow, that's very true. And I was sitting there thinking immediately, it was a short conversation. And then I was like, how do I now incorporate that into my reality? Because I had experienced that. You know, I was, before I was a Swami, in my first year as a Swami, I was a very extroverted person. Social, always with the people, etc. And you get a reputation for that. Then I became a Swami, and Guruji told me some really important things. Like, he initiated me and he gave me some life lessons. He said, I want you to change, basically. Don't be too much with the people. Don't be like this. Don't be like that. There were many things he said. Maybe I'll go into another time. And so I changed. I became a little more introverted, stayed away from people a little bit to nurture a different, let's say, part of me. And I definitely thought that one of the consequences of that was that I'd become less prominent. And that would be a good thing for me, for my ego and for managing all of that. But then what happens? Everywhere I go, the first thing everybody was saying to me is, oh, look at him. He's out of his room. Like, he's out and about now. Like, look at him. It's a rare chance. Look, he's here.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh. Stepping away from the limelight didn't make me less, in a sense, highlighted. Now it's like even more, like, because it's rarer. So when I do show up, it's more of a, and I was just like, oh man, how do you do this? Like, how do you run away from a problem that chases after you? Yeah.
Okay, go, sorry.
Yeah, and then I spoke to Guruji to close this off. And I said to Guruji, so how do I handle this? Because Guruji was bashing his devotees for a long time about this, like ego, you want praise, you want fame, you want all recognition, all of this stuff. And he had told me for a long time, you be careful, because you are talented. God has graced you with many things, but he also graced you with a healthy ego. That ego can get very big if you don't watch out. And I was always very careful in trying to manage that. And I said to him, so how do I deal with this problem? I'm with the people, and then I get told that, oh, look at him always trying to be the superstar in front of everybody. I step back, and then everybody says, oh, look at him, he thinks he's better than everybody else, he doesn't want to be with the people, whatever else. In each way, there's some talking going on. And then he said to me, first of all, you have to learn, pardon my language, but this is exactly what he said to me. You have to learn to not give a shit what anyone says about you. Genuinely. Like, deep inside, you tell yourself this as a mantra, to hell with people. Not because they don't have value or because they're not this, that, and the other, but because they don't know you. And so the opinion of someone that doesn't know you is worth nothing. And I said, okay. Then he looked at me and said, but you don't know yourself either.
I was about to say exactly that.
So
we know ourselves.
So your opinion also doesn't matter. And I said, that's a bit more problematic, because we like to label ourselves, or at least to understand ourselves. Which kind of person am I, right? To feel comfortable that I'm going in the right direction. And he said, then you listen to me, because I know you. And I'll make a deal with you. If you're going too far wrong, I'll tell you. If you're doing right, I won't say anything. And I said, dangerous, but okay, let's do it. And ever since then, it's been a process of first having that almost arrogant attitude of, to hell with people, I don't care what anybody says, to eventually what I believe is now a more mature...
Which is not true, actually, because when you do it like this, you actually care.
And you can't change from one moment to the next. It doesn't work so simple. To now, what I believe is an ongoing process, but a more mature part of that process in which I listen to what people say. I'm aware of what is there, and I'm able to, in a sense, take on the statements that are made in a constructive way, but they stay at a much more surface level inside of me. So I allow them to come in, I allow them to take an influence or to have an influence and impact in me, because I do believe you can learn from people, and if you just completely shut them out, that's also not healthy. God speaks to you through many different ways, right? So the barrier first was out here. I don't care what anybody says. And I also don't think the barrier can be non-existent, that everything comes in. So I think the barrier is more in the middle now, where it's like I do take things, but there's a limit of how far I take it. There's a realm behind that wall, behind that curtain, where I say, my true worth, my true identity, who I am, who I'm not, if I'm good, if I'm not good. I leave that to the one that truly knows me, and I leave that to the one to whom I've dedicated myself to. Because if I'm his devotee, then it's his business to tell me if I'm a good devotee or a bad devotee. It's nobody else's business, because I'm not your devotee. I'm his devotee. He has to tell me if I'm a good devotee or not. And he tells me in a different language. It's not in the language of words. He tells me in the language of feeling, of intuition, of all of those things that we were mentioning before.
Well, talking about the danger of fame, no?
Yeah.
I remember always there is a famous movie, Fight Club, no, where this Brad Pitt personage says at some point, the things you own eventually own you.
Yeah.
Okay? And this is pretty much understandable with material things. But fame, it's an immaterial thing that eventually starts to own you.
Yeah.
Okay? So eventually you become his or her slave. This is a very visible danger, very visible, because of course it's such a temptation. Fame is just an amplifier. Let's put it like that, which makes good things amazing and makes normal bad things horrible, disgusting. Okay, so it just maximize everything out. Now, when the good things are maximized, of course, the ego is like running after those things. Yes, I've done those things. I'm the good one. And that's the very danger, because once you you follow that lift off, then you're ready to fall down in many, many, many ways. The most easy one is when the bad things are maximized. Okay? So you were talking about not giving a shit about others' opinion. Okay? I had actually this constant daily struggle with social media comments, because it's something I have to confront myself every single day. And I noticed one very interesting pattern, because no matter what you do, the moment you go beyond a certain level of recognition, I don't know if there is a specific number, but it maybe beyond a certain number of followers, okay? No matter what you're going to do, I'm telling you, I can make a video like... guys, today is a very beautiful day, and by the way, I like ice cream, and I want to have a good cup of ice cream, thanking you all for the support, and bye. Okay, if I make a video like this, I'm going to get negative comments on that. No, at least some. Somebody commented, no, why are you eating ice cream? Is not healthy. You should eat more healthy food, oppure. Or maybe the... why you say this is a nice day? It's actually a horrible day where I am from. We had a storm, destroyed our house. How can you dare? So, all this sucks. And anything you do has double reaction at some point, and it's extreme double reaction. I'm not gonna make a list of the bad comments I've read about myself, but it's so huge sometimes, especially if you are brave or inconscient. When you are not unconscious, stupid, let's say.
Okay.
Brave or stupid enough to touch some delicate topics, especially nowadays, given that I'm related to Russia because my wife is Russian.
Yeah.
And also with all the situation with Russia and Ukraine, I have friends in Ukraine, I have friends in Russia, and that war in the last day touched me deeply, because it was not just the war in the media, it was the war inside my house. I had friends fleeing the country, escaping the mobilization, and all this many other issues than you can imagine, even friends volunteering to go fight and kill people and all this. So I was, wow. Touching on the topic, no matter how neutral you can be, no matter how quiet and relaxed, boom, you will just put your head inside a a bunch of how do you call this, small bombs that you use when you're a kid. And anyway, but even if you do the most politically correct stuff, and anyway, there's gonna be somebody who's gonna offend you, insult you, find some criticism that it would not have happened before. No? Like, I'll make you just a quick example to let you understand how much it can go. Just a few weeks ago, I published a documentary about Scotland, okay, which is the last of a long series of documentary that I've done in the past with the same style, the same friendly communication, the same having fun of bad situation, like bad weather. Oh, you know, guys, it's Iceland. The weather here sucks always. It's but then you love Iceland. It's so beautiful and blah blah blah. Okay, nobody had anything to say about me commenting on the bad weather of Iceland.
Yeah,
I made a video about Scotland, which has nothing to be jealous about bad weather.
Sure.
Okay, so and it was like, guys, you know, it's Great Britain, so like the sky is like that. It's horrible what to do, but you have to enjoy anyway. So, and you got the very much enthusiastic guy of Scotland that comes and say, oh, now it's Scotland is bad weather. If it was anywhere else in the world, you would have said it is nice anyway, then you'd just be blaming us for that. Like, no, I'm not blaming Scottish for bad weather.
It's ridiculous.
No? But that's how far it can go.
Yeah.
For such simple things. Okay. Now it happens because what you do have a meaning outside.
Yeah.
It has an impact.
Yeah.
And before it didn't happen because it didn't have an impact. So that point, of course, it's coming back to this immaterial guy that stands on your shoulder, which is fame and it's longing to control you. It can control you both on the good side and on the bad side. Still, you are controlled. Coming back to the conversation I had with these other influencers about my book and other stuff. So then the conversation went on other topics. And I was seeing that those guys, they were fully 100% slaves of their own fame, of themselves at a certain extent. Like, guys, what the hell are you doing? You're completely losing the focus. Then eventually, one of those published in Instagram, like 1 year later of that conversation, like, guys, I have to quit a little bit because I've got a burnout. Like, I was like, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
I was not surprised at all because
Sure.
It kills you. And why? Did you ever ask yourself why? All those famous people, actors, singers, they all fall into self-destroying patterns. Why they all fall? No, not they all, but most of them.
Often, yeah.
They fall into dependence, drug dependence, sex dependence, gambling, or depression. Or you look from us, come on, you have all. You have fame, you have money, you have everything. And there is a famous quote, I think it comes from Jim Carrey, I guess. I don't know if it's, but it's usually attributed to him. Like, I wish that all people in the world had fame and money so that everybody could finally understand that that's not the answer.
Yeah.
That's not what gives you what you need in life.
Yeah.
And the moment you reflect on that, by leaving that on the first place, on first hand. So I'm talking about this kind of experience that you walk in the streets and somebody recognizes you. No way. No, it's you. Oh my God, I follow everything you do. It's so beautiful. Can you please have a picture? Okay, this is nice. It's beautiful. There is an exchange and so on. But you have to be very disciplined in saying, okay, this is not me. This guy is not having an interaction with me. It's having an interaction to what I do means for him. Yeah. And what I do, first of all, it doesn't come from me at the first place, because as I mentioned before, at the very beginning, I realized that there is something bigger behind helping me doing something. As the Gita says, no? The wise man look at everything happening and says, I do nothing.
Correct.
Okay, if we bring it to the highest spiritual interpretation, it's way far to what I'm saying, but to the most basic interpretation is that you have to be very well aware that anything you do and the effect that you have and the fruits that you have, they don't depend on you.
Yeah.
It's very much karma yoga oriented, that what I'm saying now. Like, is you have the right to do anything, but you don't have the right to entitle yourself for what happens once you've done something. Okay, and it takes a big discipline from inner point of view to be neutral from that, and being neutral also when it's bad, when somebody attacks you or say something bad about you. And that's the very danger, I think, in fame, because it's so easy to fall into that trap because you don't see it.
Yeah.
As Satyanarayana said, it's not like, okay, I'm going to give up drinking alcohol, whatever. You just stay away from alcohol.
Yeah.
The moment you, okay, I'm going to give up the opinion people have with me, because fame is essentially that.
Yeah.
Famous people just have amplified that dynamic, but somebody can live this in a much closer environment, even at high school. If you are the cool guy in the classroom,
these dynamics.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Like the beautiful girl of the high school experiences the same exact dynamics of a supermodel, just on a different range.
Yeah.
The dynamics are those, and the solution to those dynamics are always the same. It's like selflessness, service, reminding that you are not the responsible of the fruit of the action. Of course, it doesn't mean that you have to, do something actively badly, but basically you have to put a filter, to detach yourself, the idea you have of yourself, the consideration of yourself from what happens in the outside, and always be constantly in a very disciplined way focused on the fact that this is just a tool. It's a tool, nothing more. And with a tool, it can be used in a bad way and in a good way. With a knife, you can cut food, make a nice sofrito for mushrooms. You can kill people. And this is something that basically I reflect upon on a daily basis, because, as the Gita says, from prominent people, the people follow their example. Whatever you do, people will follow. So that's the very issue. The moment you use badly that tool that has been given to you, you cannot entitle yourself for that. Then you become responsible to how you handle it. And you have to be, again, all the self-discipline and everything you apply to yourself, it becomes maximized, because now the lights are on you. Okay.
You touched upon something now that I find it's really important, but it's also really relevant to my life. So when you talk about this, like the people copy prominent people. Krishna says this in chapter 3 of the Gita, and I feel like one of the problems with fame is that people get it without that awareness that I need to be responsible as a holder of that tool, as a holder of fame, that I am now going to be putting an example out there that people are likely to emulate. And the issue there is that I think a big mistake we all make in society is that we put people on pedestals, we put people on altars. And I think if you, instead of putting the person, the same way that we as the doers are saying, I'm not the doer, it's something else that's happening. It's the service that's really the thing that they love. It's the service that's the thing of real value. I often think it's the same thing we have to do with people from the other side, which is, imagine there's somebody around who's really humble. And you think, I would like to be more humble like that person. So that person becomes my role model. Right? And then one day you see that person being arrogant. And you just go, now what? Like, that destroys your entire vision of it, right? And I always have the opinion that the mistake in this is that they put the person on the altar instead of the quality on the altar.
That's the point.
Put humility on the altar. Say, I love humility, and so I will appreciate it wherever I see it. And for now, it may be that this person is the one showing me. But if they stop showing me that one day, that's not going to destroy my altar, because my altar is not going to have that person. It's going to have humility. And humility will never disappoint me. Because humility cannot not be humble. That's the definition.
The other nuance in that is that the moment a role model fails to meet your expectation, then it gives you an alibi to,
Look, they did it, so,
okay.
I agree.
Even the Pope slapped somebody because he was nervous. So who am I to not do so? So that's the, from the popular personal point of view, it's a responsibility of course. But at some point, you have to also accept that you are as human as any other being. You can fail.
Sure, but I mean, it's part of that responsibility of being the famous person is to tell them to view me in a more intelligent way, which is love what I do.
It's not easy,
I know.
because
I know.
it's perceived as a even okay, who are you now? You're gonna tell me how should I think? I don't know. It's strange. This maybe some.
No, you're right. You're right. But I still think it's part of the responsibility because look, I look on the spiritual level.
One thing that I do. Sorry to
Go ahead.
one thing that I always do is that I got many messages, like especially from youngsters that tell me, I want to be like you. I want to do the things that you do, and so on. I'm quite strict answering to them, like, this is the worst thing you can do. You don't have to be like me because I am like me. Nobody else is like me.
Yeah.
You have to be yourself.
Yeah.
You can take some inspiration if you find something that I've done as inspiring, but then you don't have to be anybody else, because the best achievement you can have is to be the ugly copy of somebody else.
Yeah.
That's the best. And the world is not going to need you because there is already the original one.
Yeah.
No, it's like so it's something also to inspire people. What I say is like, just focus on what you love.
Yeah.
This is coming back to the first topics we touched already. But
Yeah.
That's the main thing. You don't be person oriented. Don't be personality oriented. Be quality oriented. That's as you say.
I agree, because I think in the spiritual religious domain, obviously we follow Guruji, and so many accusations are made so many times about, oh, you following a cult, it's this, that, and the other. We've heard this so many times.
I guess you're gonna touch maybe the topic that once the people know that you're following a master, what they say, because I've been confronted with that a lot.
Maybe we can tap into that. But where I was gonna go is that I feel like, sometimes you have people. I've seen this many times. So people follow a guru, and they fall into the trap of like, oh, they read some book, they heard some talk, and they feel like, oh, my guru is like, he's like the embodiment of the divine, and they start treating him as if he's God, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that can be the naivety or the inexperience of the person, or a genuine feeling, whatever, the person is feeling that way. And then I always think, okay, now how is the guru going to receive that behavior from their side? And I feel like if the guru is in fact not a divine being or divine incarnation, but just somebody who has genuine substance to share with the world, which I therefore support, he should. It's right for that person to act in a guru-like way. I don't have a problem with that. But I always feel like I would love for you to take the responsibility to tell your disciples, as much as you may value me, I am not God. Please don't have that misconception about who I am. And so I always want to attribute some responsibility to the person that holds the position of prominence, to say, let me explain to you what my position actually is. You see this with actors, with musicians, with whatever, because the crowds, the people that engage with this stuff often lack the nuance and lack the intelligence sometimes. And I don't mean to call people dumb, it's not that, but the perspective perhaps to separate the service, the art, whatever is being produced from the person. And I think it's important to do so in many instances, because the art will always be art. The person is a malleable thing that changes from one moment to the next. People are not the same throughout their lives. But art is art. You can appreciate it as it is. Your opinion may change, but the art remains what it is. The Mona Lisa is the Mona Lisa. It has never changed. Opinions about it may change, but it has never changed. Whereas Da Vinci changed throughout his life. And the same thing is true of any situation. And therefore, I feel like the world is unstable because people attach themselves to unstable things. Celebrities, people, dreams, desires, whatever. Things that come and go, change all the time. And then they worry that their life is chaotic and they have no stability or satisfaction, whatever. And it's like, well, yeah. If you ground yourself in things that are unchanging, for example, the soul, it's never going to get older, it's never going to die, it's never going to this, that, and the other. Now I have a rock solid base. I'm happy. Things can come and go in my life, but I have a rock solid base. So there's a lot of psychological connections with this entire worship of celebrities that the world
now
has.
It's like it's 10 years I've been on the web, let's say, more than 10 years, but let's say 10 years. And nowadays I get more and more some comments like, come on, you're not the same guy as the first videos, you lost that juvenile enthusiasm, and I look at these comments like, well, thank you, it's a compliment you're doing. Like I would be worried
for sure.
if would say the same. I mean
then go watch that video.
I was 27 years old, now I'm 30. I was 28, now I'm 38.
Yeah.
Like, do you know anybody that's from 27 is the same as 37? It's then if it's so, he has a problem. This guy, quite likely, it's faking something. Everybody changes. It's growing, and then of course, in my personal experience, it falls the spiritual path, because the spiritual path is something that transforms the very roots of your being, the very roots of what you're doing, and this is visible outside. It's so visible. Even if you don't speak about that, it's visible. You're a testimony of what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
And many times, I've got the question like, how can you be so calm? How can you be so, let's say, so positive, so peaceful, so blah, 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 blah? And I always give the same answer. Like, I have a good master. That's it. I mean, what do you mean by that? I have a good master. Have you heard me speaking about my spiritual master? Yeah, you mean that guru Indian stuff? Yeah, sort of like that. It's not Indian, but anyway.
Sure.
But what do you mean by that? He gives me the tools for that. He gives me the practice. He gives me the inspiration. He gives me the example, the primary example.
Yep.
No? And usually people are disappointed by those answers because they want you to acknowledge their image they have of yourself. They want you to comply to their divine creature they created in their mind somehow, and it also bring, it also falls on the responsibility that you have, because everybody time to time can fail on some, let's say, you get angry, you yell at people and so on. If you do it in your family, it's fine. But if I do it in public, then this reflects on everything I've done before. So like, so you see, those are the spiritual people. Can you imagine? No, and it's something you always have to be aware that the moment you receive some amazing gifts from your master, from your spiritual path, then you have to be grounded and be a good sponsor for those qualities. So otherwise, it's gonna fall on the things that you're most grateful to.
Yeah. But I think this is the scary part and the pressure in a sense.
It's scary
because you're representing someone. You're representing sometimes even more than someone. Like I'll give you an example.
In your case, it's much more.
Yeah, but it depends.
Evident.
It depends because you reach people that I don't. You see what I'm saying? And I think we're representing in a sense to a wider audience. And so, but look, I'll give you an example. I had to go. This was like a few years ago. I had to go buy a new computer, and I was like, I'll just go to the Apple store and I'll get a MacBook. And then I'm off to go there as a monk, and then I'm thinking, because, I mean, people don't really think. Yeah, if you're a monk, but you write, for example, or you just do work in the digital world, which is normal every day. Everyone does that these days. It's like, why would I not buy what I believe to be the best machine to do it with, a MacBook, right? If that's possible, why not? Because there's this feeling of, well, it's expensive. You're a monk. You shouldn't have these things. And so I was just visualizing myself walking into the Apple store dressed like this, and thinking, I'm going to be not only representing myself in that moment, or Guruji, I'm going to be representing every religious monk in the world, because they're going to be looking at that and thinking, look, monks even come here and, buy Apple products. And I felt such a weight on my shoulders.
It can be an advertising.
Yeah, but you see, there was that inner conflict of like, okay, I'm going there and proudly representing who I am. But then it's like, but am I also correctly representing the monk community to the world, that we just go and spend thousands of euros on computers or whatever, And I asked Guruji, and he was like, oh yeah, difficult dilemma. And I was just like, yeah, but don't tell me it's a difficult dilemma. What's the answer? What should I do?
Buy it online.
Buy it online. No, he said, oh no, just be who you are. But I went. So I went as a monk, right? And I walk in, and immediately everybody looks like, how's this guy doing here, right? You can't miss the orange.
Yeah, exactly. It's not,
And I'm
not
just
like the most incognito guy.
no, not really. I'm quite tall as well, so it doesn't help. And I'm just there, and I felt all these eyes on me, and I'm just thinking, damn, I was not ready for this. Like, I have no shame of my life as an individual, but I felt, like I said, the responsibility of representing people I'd never even met. Like, people are now going to form opinions about whatever. Then one person walks up to me and says, "Are you Buddhist?" And then I just laughed inside because I was like, great, I'm representing the Buddhists. That's not my people. Like, no problem. They can think that about the Buddhists. Sorry, Buddhists. No, it's just a tough point. And the thing is, when we talk about Krishna's verse that, people copy what prominent people do, I always had one experience in my life that I always go back to, which is when I first came to Guruji's ashram. So I met Guruji in London, and he invited me I had 2-week holiday from school, and he said, come to my ashram, spend some time there. And I said, okay, cool. I arrived in Stephanshof, which was the ashram we had before Sri Pittanilaya, small little community. And one of the guys that picked me up at the airport, Partha, he was told, Guruji said to me, oh, he's the abbot, he's the head monk. And I was like, oh, wow. Now, Partha didn't know that Guruji told me this. He didn't ask for any of that. But I immediately looked at Partha and I thought, okay, he has to be the example for me to follow. Because I just showed up to this monastery, to this ashram. He's the head monk. He's the guy. But he was just no normal guy. He was just going about his life. He had no clue that he now had a young person looking at him, trying to copy him. And I just feel like, how often does that happen in your life? That somebody just looks up to you and you don't know that they're looking up to you, and they're watching everything you say, everything you do.
Every single thing.
And you're just like...
Time to time I realize because they tell me.
Right. Well, but you're in a unique position because once you become actually famous, you become more aware of this. But I think even the random people, average people walking in day-to-day life don't realize that there may be one person. Doesn't need to be a 1,000, 100,000. Just that one person that looks to them without telling them that you are my idol, like you are my role model.
It's a very interesting point, because one thing we didn't mention, but it's worth highlighting, is that fame is absolutely one of the most relative things you can analyze. No, it's like it depends completely on the context. Now we are having this interview in English, and quite luckily, 99% of the people that are gonna listen to this interview, they will ask, okay, but I don't know this guy. They're talking about fame, but this guy is not famous at all because I'm famous in Italy.
Right.
For Italian people.
Your wife is famous in Russia.
My wife is famous in Russia. For Russian people. In Italy, nobody knows who is my wife. So, and the same people, you, among the Bhakti Marga community,
people outside of Bhakti Marga, they don't know who I am.
You are outside Bhakti Marga, who is Swami Revatikaanta, but inside Bhakti Marga, Swami Revatikaanta, my God, this is like the head of knowledge department, can you imagine? So, and if you take different, how could you call this, ensemble, I don't know, this circle of this reference, if you change your reference, okay, like inside the family, the father or the mother are the prominent people. Inside the school, the teacher. Or inside the football team,
the captain.
Okay, anybody in any stage of life can confront with those dynamics, and most of the time not being aware of that. Maybe even just a regular. For example, when I was a kid, I was looking some random adults that for some reason touched some strings inside me that I felt some connection. I don't know. Maybe eventually when I grew older, I just realized that we were completely, idiots or whatever. But when I was a kid, I was looking at them like, those are models for me. For no reason, maybe just because I felt it. And anybody can find himself in that situation. So it's something that maybe people should learn from popular people sharing, is that that way of thinking, that you have to be responsible of what you do, that you have to be aware that you can be representative of something bigger than you, even if you don't know. It is there. It's factual in life. In any given circumstances, just it changes the scale as long as you broaden the public. Let's say. So now you're talking with somebody that is quite popular in Italy, in the YouTube community, in the travel community. Okay, But the moment you will eventually speak with, I don't know, with Brad Pitt or whatsoever, okay, even the smallest word they say. Actually, I had this experience with my wife. My wife that had a public scandal in Russia because of a wrong word in an interview.
Yeah.
Wrong word that actually it came out spontaneously. Just it was not even meaning that, but just she said this.
I'll have a scandal in Bhakti Marga if I say a wrong word. It works like
It's
this
the
always.
same.
Yeah.
But then what happens if it comes out? It comes out. Okay, Swami Revatikaanta is a Swami, one of the most prominent Swami in the Bhakti Marga community. So this fall down on your master.
For sure.
Same if I publicly speak about me being a devotee, me having a master, me having a spiritual path. At some point, if I fuck up something, sorry for that, then okay, you see,
you will form opinions about Guruji.
Yeah.
People will make their opinions about Guruji based on you.
That's scary, I'm telling you.
I know.
But
this I have to say, this is not, I don't give a solution to this. This is a responsibility everybody has to take. And I would extend this to almost every part of humanity, not even just devotees of Guruji or whatever. Everyone has to become more conscious and more responsible about the example they put out into the world. You cannot be so carefree and careless. Like people underestimate the impact they have in the world. Two statements can be true at the same time. One statement, we all don't matter because we're all little infinitesimal, little tiny things. Fine. On the other side,
we all matter.
You all matter. Yeah. Both of those things are true from their own relevant points. I think it is really, really important for everyone to take that more deeply inside their hearts and minds. I matter, my words matter, my example matter, my behaviors matter, my attitudes matter, and I have to be respectful and careful, considerate, which is different, of the example that I put out into the world, because it is service. Your very being can be service. So sometimes people make the mistake, they think service is only what you do.
No,
service is who you are.
What you are.
That's it.
Who you are,
what you are. That should be seen in your own mind as service. And so therefore you have to cultivate that in a careful way.
This is one of the answers. I mean, when whatever topic you touch in life, and especially when it's about, your profession or the way you mainly interact with the world, it has to be service. Like you ask me about my profession, like I struggle to be focused on the service attitude. Even in my marriage, in my family life, it's a service attitude. Even inside the devotee community, it's a service attitude that I should have. No, whether I'm teaching Bhagavad Gita to Italian devotees, whether if I'm just sharing my own experience in a satsang or just talking with some others, I need to be responsible. I need to be grounded. I need to be the best possible version of myself. And of course, this is not something you reach from one day to another. It takes discipline. Like if I'm not mistaken, in the episode with Aniruddha, we were mentioning like what is the secret of devotion, and you said that this is the discipline. No, I love that part, because discipline is actually the secret of many other things in life. That eventually, as you said, as you have several dharmas that eventually bring you to the final one. Then you have to be disciplined in many different things to eventually reach the one aspect where you have most to be disciplined. And it's, of course, it's a growing process. And being under lights, under the popularity, say, situation, as I said before, it just maximizes that. It's an amplifier. But you don't have to think that it only applies to influencers, to famous singers or whatever. It's a daily life situation. Like I remember once, even when you could have all the excuses to not respect those qualities. I had an example once. The moment the war in Russia and Ukraine started, then of course people know that I live in Russia, so they wanted to hear from me what's the situation down there, and even some more interpretation about history and politics, whatever. And I've been invited by several newspaper and how do you call this Twitch platforms where there are streamers and so on, just to participate in the discussion. And once I was in one discussion where basically all the people, they were not looking for let's say the other perspective.
Right.
They were just looking for shouting at somebody just to make audience. That's what was their target. It was my bad not to verify that before accepting the invitation, but I found myself in that situation where basically I could not even finish a sentence, and they will start misinterpreting my words, putting in my mouth words that I didn't say, and yelling at me like, "You are supporting the killing of innocent people." And I was like, I'm not doing anything of that. No matter if you start the interview by saying that you are against any violence and whatever. Okay. And I found myself in that situation, like I had the whole inner process, like, okay, what should I do now? Like the most obvious thing would be like, okay, guys, you can imagine what I could say, and das vidania, and you leave. I just say, okay, I've been invited, I'm in that situation, I have to accept the situation. I just give the best in the situation. I was just keeping on going with the conversation without not moving a muscle of my face, like just answering politely if they will insult me, like, no, this is actually not true, it's not what I said, and so on. That's how I decided to cope with that situation. And eventually, and then these guys nowadays, they still speak badly about me now, all this on. It was such a horrible conversation with the guy. But then if you go in the comment section of that situation, of that interview, let's say, like you get a whole amount of people, like, how can I say, offending those interviewers, like, you didn't respect your guest, blah, blah. This guy is such a, the word they've been used, like, he was such a lord, like
gentleman, right?
Gentleman. Like he never fell into your trap, and so, and I was so happy about it. Like, I didn't even realize, like, hey, wow, being calm, being in the state of calmness, no matter what is the outside situation, that was a good example. This whole situation was not about speaking about what was going on in Russia. It turned out to be portraying some human qualities. No? So what people get from that interview is not my insights on Russia situation. They get the fact that I was able to not respond to offenses, that I was firm, that was, how can I say, I was not falling into the dialectic trap, okay? Which is a quality, and eventually, when I look at this situation, which was one of the most evident, that's why I bring it out. It's so beautiful to see that even without me being aware of that, that was the result of sadhana, of practice, of going into the inner space and not falling into the ego trap of all the ego traps. Let's say. It's kind of test that sometimes you success, sometimes you fail. The moment you success, you're okay, good, let's keep on that. And when you fail, of course, I failed other times, of course.
Like we all. I think that's actually one of the best things that we can do as people, whether you're very famous, mildly famous in your own house, it's to be very honest, because honesty wins the day always. And when you're mature, let's put it like this, it's the burden of those that are mature and wise that they have to sometimes put up with the immaturity of others, but hold their maturity as a beacon, as a light, like the lighthouse, the compass that points north. You have to show a better way. And I think I had that experience myself. There was a 2-year period where Guruji encouraged me to engage in a lot of religious debates. And so I was invited by an organization that was organizing these debates, and I was going out to Frankfurt and to other places and having these debates with Muslims, with Christians, with all sorts, Scientologists, Buddhists. I had many interesting experiences. And when I went there, I immediately had that first question, which was, let me go with an open mind. I don't know what the objective of this is, but let's go and talk. And always these debates have some kind of agenda, which is like, oh, it's about creating peace between the religions. I'm not naive. I'm not going there thinking I'm going to convert a Muslim or convert a Christian into Hinduism from one conversation. Even the act of me wanting to convert them is already against the principle of peace between the religions. And so I'm showing up there thinking, okay, I'm just here to try to create bridges, try to create some connection points. Okay. But that doesn't mean that everybody else is there with the same intention. So let's give the example. Somebody starts to try to convert me, or to what happened in several instances, for example, with the Muslims, they would come and say, your religion is not valid. It's
any religion is not valid, I think.
They were not so brave to go that far in a Christian environment that they were in, because it was organized by a Christian group. But at least the Hindus, like, maybe we can gang up on the Hindu. And so he was saying, like, no, it's not valid, and he starts on this. And I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking, so why am I really here? Like, does Guruji want me now to refute this person? I can very easily. Who is this really for? And then it was always hitting me, it's for the audience. It's got nothing to do with these people that I'm debating. Mm-hmm. These people are not going to change their minds. They are the way they are. They've come to play their own game, and they have their own agendas and whatever. I'm here to represent what we stand for and what we're trying to bring to the world, to the people that are neutrally watching this. And when you take on that mentality, then you understand the value of etiquette, of your behavior, of how you hold yourself. And so if you see that in life in general, now blow that up into life, that I'm not trying to convert anyone, but I'm trying to silently and passively invite everyone to come to know what it is that I do in my life, or what it is that I bring into my life. I mean, the Gita speaks of this, which is, don't give the Gita to someone who's not worthy of it.
And I was exactly thinking about that part.
And the question comes, how do I know who's worthy and who's not? And the answer should be actually simple. They'll reveal themselves to you. But you've got to make the invitation. If the invitation isn't there, they can't respond.
Yeah, 100%.
But the invitation becomes as much about the content as about the conduct, like how you present that content. Yes. You know what I mean? And so there's a burden of responsibility on everyone, and the more prominent you are, the more you have that burden.
Yeah. Also, when it comes to the specific of spiritual path, because of course I made no confusion, never secret, let's say, in my public speaking, that the most important thing in my life is my spiritual path, my master, what I learned from him. In any given circumstances, even if we're talking completely about something else. Once I was in an interview, speaking about all this topic about success and finding your path and so on. Then the interviewer said to me, like, if you had to choose one book to bring into a desert island, which book would you bring? Maybe expecting some novel or Lord of the Rings and so on. I got the Bhagavad Gita. They were like,
What?
What is it? It's BHA Bhagavad Gita. Oh, it's a Hindu scripture. It's a very beautiful book, and just briefly speak about why it's important to me. And they get baffled.
Yeah.
Like,
now what?
I didn't expect that. Wow, let me find that book somehow and so on. And eventually, I think that through a couple of these conversations, like all the Amazon copies of Italian Bhagavad Gita, they were sold out because many people
that's it
bought it eventually, because you're not talking about that, you're not making proselytism, let's say.
But you become the invitation, because if they like what you are, and then you say, oh, by the way, a big part of this is because of Bhagavad Gita, you don't need to say anything else about the Bhagavad Gita. They'd be like, well, let me like, you've invited me, let me make the step.
Yeah, like as we said in the beginning, life is not, in any aspect, is not about what you do. It's about how you do it. And when it comes to
mostly,
let's say we say it's not about being a dentist or a photographer.
Sure.
Is the topic is the point is that where do you have the most love?
Yeah.
Okay, what you love the most,
and marrying that with value, service.
and you marry with the service value. Okay, that's the answer, not the photography nor the dentistry. Same when you're into the religious debate. It's not how many verses of the Gita you can chant by heart, how many Sanskrit you know, how many scriptures knowledge you have. It's about how much are you able to simply embody what you believe in. It's
coherence.
How? Okay, and the same when, of course, I always reflect upon that topic. You mentioned the Gita verse where Krishna said, "You don't give this teaching to those who are not ready." But right before said, "You have to spread the teaching because this is the biggest service you can do.
There's no better service you can do."
So we're always in the space between those two verses, no? And of course, I often think about my position like, hey, I should speak more about that. And it's growing this awareness, and eventually I started already a small part of my communication, which is about and then test how it's
Very
gonna,
good.
But the point is that so far what I'm doing is just focusing on be coherent with what I believe in, and then eventually start speaking about it.
Yeah.
Because once you have a solid base, then you can speak about something. But the point is that when as you know, one of the situations I find myself more often is leading photography workshops all around the world, which means that I have a bunch of people around me. We go to see the most beautiful places on the planet, we take pictures and so on, and eventually we talk to each other for 1 week in a row, like 24 hours. And somebody eventually comes to, listen, I've heard you have a master or what? Can you please tell me more about that? And somebody, they just ask for curiosity. Somebody, they ask because they feel themselves called to that direction. And it's amazing to see how spontaneously the conversation goes according to how ready the person you're talking to is ready to receive. I find myself in a situation where into whole week of trips with people, I never had the chance to mention my path because it was never a topic, and it would not land anyway. It would just, people were not interested in that.
Sure.
Fine. It's okay. It's a service.
You don't force it, yeah.
It's just like that. Then eventually your roommate, when they see you are doing your puja and so on, like, what is that? Just prayers and so on. But if you ask more, of course you go deeper. And in some other situation, like I had, you just meet the people in the airport. And it was one situation where I was at the gate of the boarding of the flight, like the very day we were reading verses of the Gita, because this person was so much interested and so much involved to get this kind of understanding, and he was following me. I know you follow this master. Can you please tell me more? And blah blah blah. Then eventually she became devotee. So it's
amazing.
It's so spontaneous. So the point is that. What's the point I want to make in this example is that among these two recommendations that the Gita gives, spread as much as you can, don't spread to those who are not ready. How can you determine who is ready and who is not? You don't know yourself, you think you know others. No, we said it many times in this conversation. No? So what the balance I found in that, given also my position and possibilities to reach a bigger audience, you just you drop it. No, you just have to drop it and make like a signalation, let's say, that you are there. I'm available. No? Whatever.
Beautiful, yeah.
The moment somebody is interested, they will come to you naturally, and they will, because otherwise it's unnatural and it's even disrespectful to what you received.
I agree.
To push people on that.
I agree.
And
it's a beautiful sentiment. You make yourself available, and things will come to you. When you close yourself off, they won't. And when you force doors that are closed,
which is the same things that Guruji does.
Yeah.
He makes himself available.
True. Whenever
you're ready, he's there.
You're absolutely right.
You can come for darshan. You can come for any sort. You can go as deep as you want.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most beautiful experiences I had in that aspect, and this actually, which gives true value to everything I'm doing, to also to the recognition, the popularity I have, is that it gives the chance to people that would never have the chance to have what I had in my first experience. Like, I was not interested in spirituality. I was saved at a certain extent, no, from the appearance, literally, of Guruji in my life. It made everything I did brighter, more beautiful, and make every single aspect of my life more joyful, more happy, more fulfilled. Okay, so the moment people ask me, I'm very confident. Okay, guys, look at the result.
Yeah,
look at the result. I'm not talking about the number of followers. Look at the joy that spontaneously comes out from everything I do. It's not something that comes out of nothing. It comes from a specific attitude of life that I was able to frame into my mind thanks to these teachings, thanks to this example, thanks to this experience I have that I constantly keep on feeding because it's so important. And it's something that people respect, because okay, this guy apparently he would not need to keep on going to this master and so on, because apparently from outside perspective he has everything he needs to have. But how can I say, it seems that there is something more to that. Let me dig into that. And the most beautiful situation I've been living is after a whole day of touring and whatever, like welcoming some people in my room, because maybe in a group of 15 people, 10 people, 3, 4, 2, 1 can be interested, and just having a tea with those persons and conversating and sharing this experience, and you create this temple atmosphere, no? The moment you can put, let's say, devotion, bhakti, and all the spiritual benefits you got from your path inside what you received from the application of what you received in the path. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of difficult to put into words now that I speak. It's a little more confusing than it is in my mind, but I hope it's clear.
I get it.
And the key is that, like, somebody. Sometimes I see clearly there is somebody that needs help. Yeah. It clearly needs help. Some people are truly desperate because they come in the street like as a distraction, but in their daily life they have a disaster, really disaster. Okay, from spiritual, psychological point of view. Okay, they ask me, what? Same approach. It's not